What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and we are starting a new segment on the Iron Will Tennis channel, separate from the HARDCOURT podcast that we're doing. We're going to be adding in this section. This is going to be the stuff that we don't actually get to go into when we're in the podcast, whether it's because of time or whether it's because of not really being on topic. But these will be like the more direct conversations. I'll be tackling any of the questions that people want to send us to the podcast. I'll be tackling anything that we get in the DMs or stuff like that on the Iron Will Instagram. But the whole purpose of this little separate segment is I'll get into some of the topics that I feel are relevant to whatever the conversations are that we've been having, as well as I'll just be getting into a bunch of stuff that I feel is going to be beneficial to you guys or beneficial to the channel in the long run. So today, obviously, it's just kind of an intro to what's going on. Don't pay attention to the lights changing. Actually, we haven't gotten everything fully set up. So right now in the background, there's a window wide open, which keeps making it brighter and darker. Don't worry about that stuff. Just listen to the sound of my voice. So today, I want to get into a couple of very simple things. Simple thing number one, we're going to be talking about some of the changes that have been going on with the USTA as well as the ITF and the ATP and WTA. I'm also going to get into a couple of things that I've felt have been beneficial as well as not beneficial, especially for me being a person who's trying to get back into competing and things like that. Another thing we're going to be talking about, obviously the French Open just ended, so I'll give my thoughts on some of the things that are going on within the majors and the WTA and ATP, and then from there, wherever it goes, it goes. But I mean, to start off, one of the things that I've noticed and a big change that's happened in the USTA has been they've changed within the juniors, they've changed the way they've structured their whole point system, and they've made it a top-down, fully encompassing ranking list, whereas now if it's not about whether you're in a certain section. Obviously, you do have your sectional rankings, but your names are still put onto a master list, which means that you're now able to go and play a tournament in Florida, a tournament in California, go to Pennsylvania, and no matter where you are, your tournament results will immediately factor into your overall ranking in the country. Similar to the UTR, but the difference with the UTR is a rating, not a ranking. Rating meaning that you're given a number that is based on what your appropriate skill level is based on the algorithm that they've used to judge your skill set. So if you're beating people of a certain level, you must obviously be that level or better. If you're losing to people that are a certain level, then you obviously are that level or worse. So factoring in the algorithm and the way they do things, the rating system is working well. People are looking at the UTR ratings. Obviously, you guys already know that. But the ranking system is different. Ranking is all in a order. So even if you have people that are all the same rating, your ranking would still be 1 through 10 or 1 through 100 or 1 through 1000. So that whole thing is different. What they changed aside from that is, and I'm pretty happy with this, I mentioned it in one of our podcasts briefly if you missed it, was one of the things that they changed was in the level 7s and level 8s for junior tournaments, those are now selected from the bottom up instead of from the top down. That's a great change to the tournament structure. A lot of times when people get into playing tournaments, obviously everybody has a starting point. Some people don't get into tournament play until they're really confident in their abilities. Other people want to get into tournament play right from the beginning because they're more competitive or they want to see what it's like. With changing the way you enter into a tournament, the USTA making it from the bottom up and the top instead of the top down, if you had zero tournament experience and you're entering a level 7 or a level 8, you get chosen over the people who have a lot of experience. I feel like that's a wonderful change to the way the systems are going because that opens up the door for a lot of new to tennis people to then experience what it's like to be in a tournament. And the tournament environment is completely different than what you would be in just a practice environment or in a clinic environment. So it's good that some of these people get a chance to experience that a lot sooner. One problem that has been constant is people do what we call point chasing. And point chasing and practice tournaments are very common at all levels, all the way up to the professionals. But the difference with the professionals is professionals have already established their ability to play. So having Roger Federer do a warm-up tournament where he's playing a 250 event or even lower, it's not that much of a big deal. I still don't like it in some senses, but it's not that much of a big deal because all these players can play. But when you do it at the lowest level, which this is the lowest level. We're talking about juniors who have never played before. If you have them being bumped out of tournaments because you have somebody that's ranked really high dropping down into a low tournament, that's a loss of an opportunity for somebody to actually learn things versus just getting practice. So changing that system from top down to bottom up is huge for the juniors, because now you'll have more opportunities for junior players who have no experience to get a lot of matches under their belt, start understanding what it's like to be in a tournament environment, start learning what it's like to be in a competitive environment, have to sort things out without a coach helping you. Those things make a big difference when it comes to just being a good player and getting that early head start versus trying to register for a bunch of tournaments and then always being booted out because everybody that's playing the tournament is too good. Can really have a negative impact on how soon some people play the game competitively. Another thing is, just to kind of let you guys know, that only works if the draw is full. So a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach doesn't change anything if the draw is for 16 people and 16 people register. So everybody's getting in. The only difference is when you start going above the number of people that are in the draw, then you end up with the top players being pushed out to give room for the bottom players. Now again, this is only at level 7 and level 8, which are the two lowest ones. Once you go level 6 and higher, then your ranking and ratings factor in, and you are then selected from the top down. But to bring all that into a more accurate thing, don't forget that this only matters for people who are not having a lot of match experience. Once those players start winning more, obviously their ranking would go up from the wins that they're getting, and they would be in the same situation where they're then forced to try to play more difficult tournaments, level 6 and above. But for people who don't get those wins, they get to stay at the level 7, really get matches under their belt and sort out a lot of things. So that's one good thing that's coming about. One thing that I actually wish they would do is I wish they would take this mentality and apply it to the semi-pro amateur tournaments, such as like the ITF tournaments. Because one thing that I noticed for myself, specifically trying to get back into competitive environment, is that there's people like myself who can't get into tournaments because of being booted out for high rankings over low rankings. And you know, I'm not petty on any of that stuff. I understand why the fact that you are good gives you preference over people who are not as good as you in that competitive environment. However, what I'm saying with the ITF specifically is the ITF only has 2 levels of tournaments that they really do, which are the 15,000 and the 25,000. And the problem that I have with that is I tried to register for a couple tournaments. Obviously, Corona changed a bunch of stuff recently, but I tried to register for a couple of tournaments, and the draw was only, I think the biggest draw I saw was 64. The draw was 64. The qualifying list was twice that size. And then the alternate list had over 700 people. Obviously, my name was in the 700, but the alternate list had over 700 people. And the people who withdrew was over 100 people. That's a problem when you talk about people having an opportunity to compete. Myself, obviously, I haven't competed in quite some time, so I'm trying to get back into the competitive environment, and I wouldn't have any points behind my name. So since I don't have any points behind my name, my ranking obviously isn't high enough to guarantee me a spot, not even in the qualifying. So one thing that like the ITF should do is they should do something similar to what the USTA has done, and create an even lower division where people are selected from the bottom up. And it might be a tournament where the prize money is only $2,000, like something like, and you could have those put everywhere. There's not a lot of ITF tournaments all across the US, depending on the time of year, but you could easily do these small ITF tournaments to get people a lot of matches. It'll also be able to make stuff more accessible, more local. And from there, once you've gotten enough matches under your belt of winning at a certain level, you do the same thing the USTA has done, where let's say it's a $2,000 tournament or $3,000 tournament. $3,000 tournaments are selected from the bottom up, and then the 15,000s are selected from the top down. But you get enough matches under your belt to give yourself a chance to actually get into the qualifying or to get into the main draw. But if you have people who have never had any ITF or pro matches to date, and then they try to get in, the chances of them getting to play at all are very small. So just making that thing a thought process that the ITF could do would make a huge difference in terms of player participation. It would make a huge difference in terms of the amount of people that are able to have access to these things. And not everybody's in it for fully invested competitive travel, but the amount of times that people have invested into doing this for them to not be able to get into stuff because of having 700 people on a list with a draw that's only for 64, that's a bit much, and it becomes a bigger problem when you really start thinking about how much time people have invested into their tennis before this. So you have people that have been playing since they were 3-4 years old, that then go on to play college and then want to try to play professionally, and this is the first step. The first step is getting through these ITF things, and it's tough for some people to even break through. Which brings me into my next thing, which is at the ATP and WTA level, Corona or the coronavirus has actually really exposed a big flaw in the way that the system is run. Aslan Karatsev, the guy who went from barely anybody knowing his name to setting the world on fire with making it from wild card all the way almost through the Australian Open, and then going on to win a title like right after. He's a perfect example of people who just need their shot. People who just need their opportunity to get into a certain turn. He has hit the ground running, and I mean sprinting. But if not for this last 2 years almost of dealing with the coronavirus, well, we're at like a year and a half, I guess, at this point, but dealing with the coronavirus and there being so many people that were forced to withdraw from tournaments, so many people that weren't able to travel, quarantine didn't work out, and people just getting their shots in bigger events at this point, he's a perfect example of when you let the right person through to get their one chance, what they're capable of. And that's really where the flaw in the system is. Even at the top level, certain people are just waiting for their one breakthrough shot where they actually get a chance to compete. Obviously, getting a wild card or getting into the qualifiers depends on a system that happens outside of the actual major. So winning a certain tournament gets you a wild card, or winning this series of events gets you points towards potentially getting into the qualifiers. But at a certain point, there is still a big cutoff between the people at the top and the people in the middle. I'm not talking about the people at the bottom, but the people at the top, let's say the top 50, and the people from 50 down, or the people from 100 down, that there's a big disparity in their ability to play. And if we go into like that 250 to 300, 500 range, there's so much struggle to even get the opportunity to break even with the money that you're investing into it. Most of those people would make way more money as managers at Dunkin' Donuts. No offense to Dunkin' Donuts, but I'm just saying, you have somebody who is, and again, I'm saying this fully respectfully, you have somebody that is an average everyday employed person. And then you have somebody that's one of the top 200 athletes in the world at their sport. There's a big disparity in the novelty of what that encompasses. So even if you're not Roger Federer and Nadal with the level that you're playing, if you are a professional athlete of that tier. Top 200 is nothing to be holding your head down about. Like, that's impressive to get to the top 200 of anything. If you're a top 200 player, you're still not making top 200 in anything money. The best motivational speakers or the best engineers or the best lawyers, top 200, make way more money than the top 200 tennis players. It's not until you get into that top 50, top 25 where you start really being able to cash out off of these things. So when you look at it and you think about it in the sense of a pro athlete not being able to even realistically support themselves off the money that they're making, it's kind of a problem. Yes, as I said, the ITF has $25,000 tournaments, $15,000 tournaments, but the breakdown of that money is different. And for the people who lose first round, they don't get anything, but they've covered their expenses to get there. When you go pro in other sports, you get your signing bonus. You get the team or the organization takes care of most of the things that you're responsible for. But when you become a pro tennis player, you're still responsible for your whole career until the endorsements start kicking in. And the endorsements don't necessarily guarantee you money. You just might get a discount on rackets or a discount on shoes until you get to a certain level where people are paying you to use their things. But a lot of times, these players never really get a chance to make that breakthrough because of the break in the system where, I mean, I'll use an example. Like, we all know Roger Federer is an amazing player, so are Rafael Nadal and everybody else in the top 10. But if Federer wanted to drop down and play a ITF tournament or a 250 event, there would be nothing in the system to stop him from doing it. He would actually make money, more money, doing that versus the normal player, because that tournament would pay him appearance fees and things like that. But he would drop into that tournament just to warm up or sort out his backhand issues or see how his legs are feeling. But he's just bumped somebody out of the draw that this may have been their one shot to actually do something. And again, it's all part of the professional game, so I'm not saying that there's anything necessarily wrong with it, but I do say it's a flaw in the system where the people who are trying to make it from level 2 to level 3, they're trying to level up where they are, they end up with these roadblocks because of the people ahead of them. It's no different than with adults and the people that are coming up in the job market. There are people that are in the job market that have held their positions for so long, and the average age of retirement is getting pushed back. And when the average age of retirement is getting pushed back, you have people holding these positions longer than it used to be. So the people who are coming up that are supposed to be replacing them in these positions can't. And tennis is the same way. People are coming up trying to replace the people above them, and the people above them are so dominant, which, again, credit to what they're doing, but the people above them are so dominant that it's difficult for the people under them to even scratch the ceiling of what's blocking them. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to work our way up. Scratch the ceiling, can't get past it. But meanwhile, you have people partying on the next floor up, and there's nothing you can do to get up there. So, I mean, that's just a small example, but that's a huge flaw in the system. And the USTA is doing what they can to kind of address it at the junior level, but I feel like there needs to be something to be done to address it at the professional and semi-pro level. And again, everybody's not going to make it through, even if you address these things, but at least you'll give people a chance that they don't otherwise have. UTR ratings only get you so far. Winning UTR tournaments, they do have some UTR tournaments that get you a wild card into certain tournaments. So that is a step in the right direction, but that's still a step in the right direction with many other people that are still stuck. I've seen people that have a bad tournament, and then that bad tournament sticks with them because that was going to be their one chance to do anything. I've seen people that get hot and have a great tournament, and then they get through that tournament and they can never repeat those things again. So it's not a guaranteed thing that's going to help you get your success. However, at the same time, at least you're doing something to address the problems that are consistently happening. One of the things that really bothers me with the overall system is that people have always kind of looked at the system as a thing that's perfect. I mean, there's been challenges to the system here and there, but overall, the system's just been left to do what it does. and the money's gotten bigger, the endorsements have gotten bigger, but nobody's ever looked at the system as what can we do to make it better. There's only been a couple of changes, like World Team Tennis. I think the idea of World Team Tennis was perfect. I just think it wasn't executed the way it should have been. World Team Tennis, what could have been, for America at least, World Team Tennis could have been the equivalent of tennis NBA. Obviously, it wasn't going to be as big as the NBA, but the idea that you have professional tennis players that get signed to a team that then compete against other teams, it's the next step up from college. But you have people that could have their signing bonus. You have people that could have their travel expenses covered. They go play at certain stadiums and such. It's like a giant college match, but at the pro level. But now you have an equivalent of NFL, NBA, NHL, and then tennis has its thing, which is what World Team Tennis was supposed to be, but it didn't get done the way it should have been done. It had a lot of energy behind it. It was really exciting, but they made it more of a novelty. And because they made it such a novelty, it wasn't that great. But if you compare that to Labor Cup, Labor Cup is actually the way that it should have been done on a more broad scale. You have all these professional players who are on a team, and right now it's red versus blue, and you have these guys that have been recruited to play against these guys. You have team coaching and all that. Now what you do is, the only problem that they had with the Labor Cup, which is similar to the problem I was addressing before, is they took the best players that already had their endorsements, that already had their money, that already had all the stuff that they needed, paid them more money to do the Labor Cup, versus having an all-star player like the NBA does with LeBron James or Steph Curry, where they have a team, but they also are trying to recruit the best player, but they can't recruit all of the best players because people are getting picked up by everybody. But when you look at the Labor Cup, it's a novelty, it's a once-a-year thing, but if you take that idea and make it broader and turn it into something like the Labor Cup, but you have the team from Florida playing the team from California with that same level of energy, you could have that thing grow exponentially because people are waiting for that. Everything's a tournament right now. That's the problem. You have to support your favorite player. People are way more excited when they're supporting their favorite team that has their favorite player. Yeah, my favorite player didn't win, but the team got the win. All those things are missing when it comes to being a tennis fan or a tennis supporter. There's too much going on where if you're not and don't forget, everybody except for one person leaves these tournaments as a loser at some point, no matter how far they get. Novak Djokovic is the only person who won the French Open. Everybody else lost it. So it makes it very difficult to have a favorite tennis player that isn't somebody that's like a guaranteed win. I have my top 5 favorite players, but it's very difficult to have somebody that you really want to support because they're not going to be dominant all the time. But when you have a team, you're supporting multiple people. You're supporting a organization. And because you're doing that, it makes it way more exciting. You could have that much energy in the Labor Cup. Davis Cup was very similar because it was country versus country, but Davis Cup has since died off because there's not that much energy put into it. Fed Cup with the women is the exact same thing. People are excited, but then it just dies off. And then you hear about what happened at Davis Cup, or you hear about what happened at the Fed Cup. You're not following it. But if you take the same idea that they've done with the Labor Cup and then you apply that to what we're doing with tennis and what we're doing with the NBA and basketball and with the NFL, if you could create that type of energy, obviously it's going to take a lot of administrative stuff and a lot of things to get it started, but take that same concept and actually fully put energy into it instead of having it be a novelty or a one day thing or a knockoff tournament or something like that, and you actually put energy into it to do it the same way. The tennis fans would 100% get behind it because they've already shown that they will. It just takes consistent energy and consistent promotion. Big problem that people have is everybody has great ideas, but a lot of people don't follow through on pushing the great ideas. My biggest problem, whether it comes to my students or whether it comes to my job or whether it comes to the organizations, is everybody has this thing that they think would be great, but most people don't want to put the steps forward to make it actually happen. So That's just a small step that it would have to take. But then from there, you'd be surprised how many people might just want to get on board with it. Head, Babolat, Wilson, Turner, Yonex, all these different companies may want to endorse players, may want to endorse certain teams, may want to endorse stadiums. You never know. But you don't know until you put that energy into it in that direction. And a lot of times it's that hesitation to take the first step that makes certain organizations fall short of what the mark was that they were trying to get to happen in the first place. But that's going to wrap up this first episode of, I guess I'll just call it HARDCOURT After Dark, because that's really what it is. We have all of our HARDCOURT conversations, and then from the HARDCOURT, I just have these things that I want to get off my mind. And the difference here is going to be you guys can get involved. You can shoot me DMs to the Iron Will Tennis Instagram, and I will tackle any of those questions that you guys have. But that's going to wrap up today. As always, hope you guys are working hard and doing great. And we will see you guys in the next one.